We now have a countdown to the world-shocking event that was first mentioned back in chapter 1078. 10 minutes, that's all the time Vegapunk has given the world to prepare themselves to hear this mind-breaking truth that he's discovered. It's also the most amount of time I can actually manage to pull myself away from playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to actually sit down and record this video. All of you out there who are currently playing the game, you know what I'm talking about. The game is addicting and it's very hard to walk away from. But back to the chapter, this is not a normal 10 minutes we're talking about. This is 10 minutes in anime and manga time, which means in this amount of time, about 1 hour's worth of events will end up occurring. So we could potentially see a lot of plot threads we currently have going on in Egghead, like the Vice Admirals hunting down Bonnie, or Broken Loaf trying to get to Sunny off the island, and before the video continues. In fact, the only thing I'm certain won't end before the 10 minutes are up is Luffy versus Saturn, solely because Luffy doesn't plan on leaving the island until all of his friends do, which is going to get harder for him to do going forward because eventually he's going to run out of energy for Gear 5, which if that ends up anything like the last time, he's going to be stuck there helpless on the ground as a dried out old man. Oh, and also because Saturn summoned the rest of the freaking Gorosei onto the island. I honestly didn't think there was anything left that Saturn could do that would impress me, but this did it. Sure, he was kinda pressured by the rest of the elders, but he was still smart enough to put his pride aside and realize that he needs help in this situation, which means in the next chapter or so, we're going to get the reveal of each of the Gorosei's yokai forms, and I'm equally excited and a little bit reluctant about that. Like, I'm really interested in seeing what they look like and what abilities they all have, but I also feel like it's way too soon to get all 5 of them. Like me personally, I would prefer that we just got Saturn in this arc, and then in the next arc after that, maybe get 2 more members of the Gorosei, and then the arc after that, get the final 2 members, instead of getting all 5 all at once on Egghead. But at the same time, that being said, it's going to be really interesting to see how well Luffy in Gear 5 holds up against all 5 at once. I imagine that even with how powerful he is compared to how Saturn has been shown off to be so far, when he's going up against all 5 of them, they might start to pressure him just a little bit. But hey, even if they do start to overpower him, he's going to have Dory and Bragi on their way to back him up, which should even odds, and make sure that once Luffy runs out of steam, he can still make it safely off the island, unlike a certain doctor who most likely won't at this point. In my review of 1108, I completely overlooked that small panel at the end of the chapter of the heart monitor beginning to flatline just as the pre-recorded message began playing. Combine that with a shot of Vegapunk as he's being carried by Sanji in 1109, and sadly, we can only assume that this means that the original Dr. Vegapunk has officially passed on. And look, we all kinda knew this was going to happen. There was like a 99% chance that Vegapunk was not making it off Egghead alive by the end of this arc, but I gotta admit, up until the moment it happened, I still sort of believed in that 1%. That somehow, someway, even with a hole through his chest, that Luffy in the game will be able to save the old man. Because, I mean, it's the Straw Hats we're talking about. Doing the impossible and breaking the odds is literally the thing they're known for. Not to mention Luffy had promised Vegapunk at the beginning of this arc that he would take him off the island, and how often do we actually see Luffy fail to keep a promise? Now, I mean, that being said though, your heart stopping doesn't necessarily mean you're actually dead. Because your heart stopping just means the flow of oxygen to your other organs, most importantly your brain, is cut off, and once the oxygen stops coming, your brain functions come to a halt and your brain cells begin the slow process of dying. Now, from my limited amount of research, I found out that it takes hours, even days, for all the brain cells to completely die, and that while extremely low, there is still a chance of someone whose heart has stopped for more than 30 minutes to recover. But it is more commonly thought that if your heart has stopped beating for 10 minutes or more, that your time on this earth has come to an end, and you're on your way up to the golden gates in the sky. Or maybe in his case, the fire pits down below. I'm not actually sure where Vegapunk will end up going. Let me know in the comments down below, where do you think Vegapunk's going to go, up or down? Of course, that's assuming that Vegapunk actually is dead, which, now that I think about it, this whole heart pumping thing, heart pumping oxygen to your brain, only accounts for people whose brains are actually inside their body, which is pretty much every other person alive besides Vegapunk, whose brain is actually part of the island. So that makes me wonder, as long as his actual brain hasn't been destroyed, can Vegapunk actually die? I mean, yeah, sure, his physical body can, but can Vegapunk actually die, or is his brain still being around going to make him be able to live on? Like, if they wanted to, could they just download his consciousness into a robot body that Frankie and Lilith build? Or something like that? I don't know. But back to the matter at hand, Oda is more than likely going with the idea that if you're dead for 10 minutes or more, then that's kind of it for you. Which is exactly the time limit we have before the pre-recorded message will begin revealing something. We're still not exactly sure what Vegapunk of the past is planning on telling the world, but it's going to be something big and something that the 5 elders are determined to not let get out. And now that they're on the island, they're going to do everything in their power to stop it. So as of right now, I see 1 of 2 outcomes. Either they fail to stop the transmission and everyone around the world hears whatever truth Vegapunk is about to reveal, or they manage to stop it just at the very last minute, and at the same time, Sanji manages to get Vegapunk to Chopper, and he somehow manages to bring him back, and he ends up revealing only to the Straw Hats whatever truth he was about to tell the world. Option 1 is much more likely what Oda is planning on doing, but I gotta be honest, I do kinda like the idea of option 2. But regardless of which one we get, the much bigger question is, what is the secret that Vegapunk is planning to reveal? Which, speaking of, I like the fact that during all this, we get to check in with a lot of people that have a strong connection to Luffy and the crew, most notably Vivi and Rebecca. We even get to check in with Iceberg over in Water 7, and his new assistant, who I think this might be the first time we've actually gotten her name, which is Alice. But what surprised me was that we didn't check in with anyone from Fishman Island or Wano. I mean, I kinda get Wano because they're almost completely cut off from the outside world, but you would think we would see Poseidon, Shirahoshi, or someone from down under. But hey, maybe we'll see them once the message really begins and we start to hear this big secret, which has a lot of fans nervous, because most, like myself, feel as though it's way too early to reveal things about the Void Century, Joy Boy, and all the other secrets that Imu and the World Gov have been trying to keep buried for centuries, and want to save the big reveal until we get to Laugh Tale. And look, again, I 1000% agree, but I don't think that's what this is. I think, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I think he's going to reveal Imu's true identity to the world, or at the very least let the world know that Imu exists. Because to me personally, the whole thing about Cobra and Sabo, Warple finding out that Imu exists, Imu wanting to capture Vivi, and all 5 members of the Gorosei gathering to stop this broadcast on Egghead, this all happening in the same arc screams to me that Oda is planning to drop a huge bombshell revolving around Imu. And nothing is a bigger bombshell when it comes to that character than revealing that this character exists and what their true name is. But that being said, even though I'm on board with the idea of Imu's identity being revealed, I can imagine that majority of the fandom probably thinks it might still be too early even for that. But hey, like I mentioned earlier, there is a chance that the 5 elders could stop the broadcast before the 10 minutes are up, and if they do, and Vegapunk actually does end up dying, then there's going to be no one to tell even the Straw Hats whatever Vegapunk was going to reveal. Because I'm pretty sure the only other 2 Vegapunks that are there with him in that video are both also already dead. But again, I wouldn't put too much stock in that happening, because the odds that the elders will stop the broadcast are about the same as Vegapunk surviving the arc. So unfortunately, regardless of what ends up being, we had to come to terms with the fact that over the next few chapters, we're going to finding out whatever the truth is that Vegapunk discovered about the world, regardless if we want to or not.